Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The director of ambulance and emergency services in Gaza has been killed in an Israeli airstrike on a health clinic in Gaza City. Hani al-Jafarawi, described as a pillar of Gaza's health system, is reported to be the 500th medical worker killed by Israeli forces since October 7th. His death came as Israel continues its attacks across the Gaza Strip. On Sunday, an Israeli airstrike on an UNRWA aid distribution site near Gaza City killed at least 8 Palestinians. On Saturday, the International Committee of the Red Cross reported at least 22 people died in an airstrike that also damaged the Red Cross's office in Rafah. On Sunday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the, quote, intense phase of fighting in Gaza is about to end and that some troops will be redeployed to the border near Lebanon. But Netanyahu vowed to continue the war on Gaza and rejected calls for a permanent ceasefire. Meanwhile, the aid group Save the Children is estimating over 20,000 Palestinian children have gone missing during Israel's war on Gaza, with thousands separated from relatives or buried under the rubble. This is Alexandra Saya of Save the Children.
What we know is that at least 17,000 children are estimated to be unaccompanied or separated from surviving family members, and at least 4,000 children are likely to be buried under the rubble.
In the occupied West Bank, Israel's admitted it strapped a wounded Palestinian man to the hood of an Israeli military vehicle during a raid on the city of Jenin. Relatives and neighbors of the man, Mujahid Azmi, said Israeli soldiers used him as a human shield instead of allowing him to get medical care after he'd been shot. This is 13-year-old Ala Azmi.
We told them we want an ambulance for the wounded person in the room, so the army told us to bring him to them. We got him outside, and for about an hour or half an hour, we kept asking for an ambulance. Then we called one. 15 minutes later, 2 jeeps came and they got in here. The troops told us to turn around and not to look, and they put Mujahid on the jeep's hood and took him.
After video of the incident went viral, the Israeli military released a statement claiming the action was, quote, in violation of orders and standard operating procedures, unquote. The New York Times has revealed details of a secret Israeli government effort to further increase its control of the occupied West Bank. The Times reveals that on June 9th, the Israeli finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, gave a speech to a group of settlers where he outlined ways for Israel to essentially annex the area and prevent the West Bank from being part of a future Palestinian state. In Israel, as many as 150,000 protesters rallied in Tel Aviv Saturday to demand new elections and for a deal to release the remaining hostages in Gaza. Organizers say Saturday's rally may have been the largest in Israel since October 7th. This is Hadass Calderon, the mother of 2 children seized on October 7th and later released.
I'm here to demonstrate and ask my government and all the government in the whole world, please do sign the deal, sign Netanyahu deal. Just do it. Bring them back home to their children, to their parents, to their families. We are all broken and tired, and we want to make end to this tragedy.
NBC News is reporting 2 active-duty U.S. Air Force members are seeking conscientious objector status, saying they can no longer serve in a military that's aiding Israel's war on Gaza. One of the airmen, Larry Ebert, made headlines in April for going on a hunger strike outside the White House, where he held a sign that read, "Active-duty airman refuses to eat while Gaza starves." The other airman, Juan Betancourt, said he, too, is seeking conscientious objector status over the war on Gaza. Meanwhile, at the State Department, a senior official working on Israel and Palestine has resigned. The official, Andrew Miller, was known to be critical of the Biden administration's full-on embrace, what they call the bear hug, of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Miller cited family obligations for his departure. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant has arrived in Washington, D.C., where he's expected to meet with Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, and other officials. They're expected to discuss the situation in Gaza, as well as Lebanon, where fear is growing that fighting between Israel and Hezbollah could escalate, as Netanyahu says the Israeli military will soon shift its focus to Lebanon. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres spoke Friday.
Let's be clear. The people of the region and the people of the world cannot afford Lebanon to become another Gaza.
Officials in Saudi Arabia have confirmed at least 1,300 people died in the extreme heat during this year's Hajj pilgrimage. Temperatures at times reached as high as 125 degrees Fahrenheit. The Washington Post reports more than 1,400 temperature records were broken across the globe over the past week, including many here in the United States, where an early season heat wave scorched the East Coast and Midwest. 3 days of mourning have been declared in the Russian Republic of Dagestan after gunmen attacked 2 Orthodox churches, a synagogue, and a police post Sunday. Authorities say 15 police officers and 4 civilians, including a priest, were killed in the coordinated attack. Police reportedly killed at least 5 of the attackers. A motive has not yet been determined. Russia launched another wave of attacks Saturday on Ukraine's power infrastructure. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky recently said Russian attacks have destroyed about half of Ukraine's electricity generating capacity in recent months. Meanwhile, a Ukrainian attack killed 5 people, including 3 children, in Russian-occupied Crimea on Sunday. Russia accused Ukraine of using U.S.-supplied missiles in the attack. Kenyan President William Ruto has said he plans to engage protesters in conversation after a week of demonstrations against proposed tax hikes and 1 day ahead of a possible national strike Tuesday. At least 2 young protesters have been killed, 21-year-old Evans Karatu and 29-year-old Rex Kanyike. Rex's mother decried the violent police response to the peaceful demonstrations.
If someone is fighting for their rights, why use live bullets? If he would have been found with any weapons, we would have said he is undisciplined, but he was walking with his friend.
Over 200 people were injured in the Kenyan protest, another 100 arrested. The Italian Coast Guard said Friday it recovered another 14 bodies of asylum seekers from a shipwreck earlier last week, bringing the confirmed death toll to 34. Dozens more are missing and feared dead. The boat had departed from Turkey with roughly 75 people from Iran, Syria, and Iraq. 11 passengers survived. The UN says an average of 5 people per day have died this year while attempting to cross the Mediterranean, as aid groups warn deaths will continue due to Europe's harsh crackdown on migrants. In South Korea, at least 22 workers are dead after a fire broke out at a lithium battery plant operated by RSL. Firefighters say exploding battery cells set off the fire. Authorities have advised nearby residents to stay indoors with their windows shut to minimize inhaling smoke from the blaze. In an 8-1 ruling, the U.S. Supreme Court has upheld a federal law that makes it a crime for people under domestic violence restraining orders to have guns. Justice Clarence Thomas cast the sole dissent. In other gun news, the death toll from a mass shooting at a grocery store in Fordyce, Arkansas, Friday has risen to 4. At least 10 people were injured. The dead include a 23-year-old nurse who was shot as she was treating another victim. The mass shooting was carried out by a gunman armed with a pistol, a 12-gauge shotgun, and dozens of extra rounds. Meanwhile, in Pittsburgh, members of the Tree of Life Synagogue broke ground on a new building and memorial at the site of the 2018 mass shooting when a gunman killed 11 worshipers in the deadliest anti-Semitic attack in U.S. history. In election news, the Trump campaign and the Republican National Committee raised $141 million in May, far more than the $85 million raised for President Biden. The Trump fundraising soared after he was convicted in New York on 34 felony counts in his hush money and election interference trial. In addition, the billionaire right-wing donor Timothy Mellon gave a separate $50 million to a pro-Trump super PAC. Mellon donated another $25 million to Trump over the past year, as well as $25 million to the campaign of Robert F. Kennedy, Jr. Trump and Biden are preparing for their first debate on Thursday in Atlanta on CNN. In media news, a British editor who was tapped for a top position at The Washington Post will no longer take the post as outcry continues to mount over a plan to shake up the Washington Post newsroom. The editor, Robert Winnett, will now stay at the Daily Telegraph in Britain instead of coming to the Post. The decision comes days after it was revealed Winnett had a history of using fraudulently obtained phone and company records and newspaper articles. The Post chief executive, Will Lewis, is also coming under scrutiny over his record. Both Lewis and Winnett are veterans of British papers owned by Rupert Murdoch. Last week, The Guardian revealed Lewis advised then UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson and top officials to clean up their phones amid public uproar over government violations of COVID safety precautions in what became known as Partygate. Lewis has also been accused of trying to suppress stories about his connection to the phone hacking scandal at Rupert Murdoch's News of the World newspaper in Britain. Last week, the owner of The Washington Post, Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, voiced support for Lewis. And in Texas, a woman's been charged with attempted murder for attempting to drown a 3-year-old Palestinian girl at a swimming pool at an apartment complex. The Texas chapter of the Council on American-Islamic Relations, CARE, is now calling for hate crime charges against the woman, Elizabeth Wolfe, who reportedly attacked the child after telling the girl's mother she wasn't really American. In a statement, the girl's mother said, quote, "We are American citizens originally from Palestine, and I don't know where to go to feel safe with my kids. My country is facing a war, and we are facing that hate here," unquote. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.